Sir Gerald Templer, is slowly bringing peace to Malaya. Templer travels, offering protection and reforms to soften the control he places on the people. By September 1953, Templer declares a part of the state of Malacca free of terrorism for the first time in 5 years. Nonetheless, the communists still have many supporters. They are far from through. In Malaya at that time was a man deeply involved in the successful New Villages program. Later, he was involved in the less successful Strategic Hamlets program in Vietnam. CBS News correspondent Dan Rather asked former Malaya Defense Secretary Sir Robert Thompson this question. What was the communist answer to the New Villages program?
The communist answer to this is that they try and retain their penetration of the villages. And you have got to eliminate those agents and supporters from the village. Now, when the people realize that they can be protected, that the protection organization is working, then they are prepared to give information on who these supporters are, and the intelligence organization can eliminate them by either there's an operation as a result of which one or two of them may be killed, or they are arrested. It is absolutely vital, because this brings one on to one of the other what I call basic principles, that it is this underground political subversive organization using the weapons of terror and sabotage and so on, which must be broken before you can ever hope to defeat guerrilla units. If the political organization is not broken, then guerrilla units, I would almost say, can never be defeated.
What about the race problem in Malaysia? Did this contribute to your difficulties?
That was two-edged. Malay nationalism came out very definitely on the side of the government, and one of the reasons for that was that it was possible to identify the communist guerrilla movement in Malaya as an alien Chinese movement.
The guerrillas were primarily Chinese.
About 90% of them were Chinese.
Do you have in mind any distinct ratio, any superiority in numbers necessary to defeat guerrillas?
I think probably the critical ratio is somewhere in the 10-to-1, 12-to-1 mark. I think that you need that during the critical period of the campaign. We had a favorable government ratio during the critical period of about 10-to-1. After the insurgency was broken, and during the long period of mopping up afterwards, which took 6 or 7 years, the government ratio, of course, got better and better and went right up to 50-to-1 as you were able to recruit thousands and thousands of home guard without any problem at all. So there you've got that movement from a government ratio of 5-to-1 at the beginning of the emergency to 50-to-1 at the end of the emergency.
The British had promised Malaya self-rule as long ago as 1947. The first general elections are held in the new federation in 1954. The communist uprising has actually delayed the end of colonialism. Among the candidates, Abdul Rahman, a hereditary Tunku or prince of the state of Kedah. The emergency, the British never called it a war, still exists. But Malay, Indian, and non-communist Chinese have come through common danger to find common ground. The alliance is loose, complex, and shaky, but it elects a legislative council with Tunku Rahman as the chief minister of the new Federation of Malaya. The government seeks reconciliation. The communists seem ready to negotiate. In December 1955, Chin Peng, the guerrilla leader, comes in from the jungle under amnesty. Chin, trained during World War II by the British to fight Japan, before the emergency was scheduled to be decorated with the Order of the British Empire. The decoration was later revoked. Now the empire is the British Commonwealth, and Chin meets with Tunku Rahman, elected leader of a new democratic state on the verge of independence. What Rahman wants is a happy Malaya, he says, but for Chin, there is no happy ending. Rahman offers rehabilitation to all guerrillas willing to accept the new government, repatriation to communist China for those who do not. Chin refuses to surrender his arms and demands the Communist Party be permitted unrestrained political activity. Turned down, Chin goes back to the jungle to keep fighting. By now, authorities have photographs of almost every guerrilla and know where to find him. This information comes largely from communists who surrendered. British forces remain to continue the fight alongside Federation of Malaya troops and police. By 1956, almost half of the country is free of terror. Chin Peng is never taken or known to be killed. He and a small force are presumed to be still in the jungle today and still waiting. That he has failed and that the Mao Zedong strategy has failed this time is attributed to Malaya's New Villages program, with social and political reforms which steal the communist thunder and cut the communist fish off from their sea. This same strategy was later tried in Vietnam. Sir Robert Thompson.
How were you able to do this in Malaysia and not in Vietnam?
Well, I think in Malaya, possibly, we were fortunate in that we did not have the forces to undertake a policy of this nature too rapidly all over the country at the same time. In Vietnam, the government at the beginning of the insurgency had a considerable superiority of force, and there was a temptation as a result to try and do this much too fast, and to do it in too scattered a fashion all over the countryside. In Malaya, we were forced, as a result of our fairly limited resources, to take the country sort of block by block.
You think it was a mistake in Vietnam, trying to do too much too soon, not moving one block at a time?
You just do it village by village. You'll end up with a situation like we did in Vietnam, where each village is still insecure. It's still in the front line. If you do them in a large block, then the villages that are on the inside of the block are in a comparatively secure area, and that releases forces for you to go to push on the advance on your perimeter. But you must do it sort of stage by stage. And the other point that I would stress is that the hold aspect of the operation can take months. It takes a long time to build up confidence within the village that you can protect it, and also to build up confidence in the people themselves that they can take part in that defense with comparative safety, and confidence, too, that the government is going to win. In other words, that the enemy is not going to retake the village in a few months, and that as a result of what they have done, they will then be killed. There is another point here, which comes back to one of the main differences between Malaya and Vietnam. And that is that as a result of the war in Indochina against the French, the Viet Minh War, the Viet Cong captured the nationalist movement. And not enough was done on the sort of psychological front to try and sort of divorce communism and nationalism. In Malaya, on the other hand, we were fortunate in that the Malay nationalist movement came out strongly on the side of the government and supported the government right through the emergency. That was a very vital factor.
Well, if the Viet Cong has captured the nationalistic label in South Vietnam, what are the chances of reversing this and our capturing that label?
Well, I think the chances basically are good, because if you look at the situation in Vietnam as it has developed over these 6 years, there is one thing that comes through all the time, and that is that the peasant does not want to be taken over by the communists. If the peasant had not been prepared to support the government, Vietnam would have been lost 4 years ago. During all this period, the government has been able to maintain forces 500,000 strong. of which only a very small percentage, about 20% in the army itself, are conscripts. The rest are volunteers.
Merdeka, independence, becomes a full reality in Malaya in 1957. In 1960, the emergency is declared ended after 12 years. Tunku Raman had the most telling footnote to how to fight a guerrilla war. He said, during the last 3 years of the war, more roads were built, schools and hospitals started than in the last 3 generations. We gave the people more than the communists could ever hope to give.